I was 26 when I first realized maybe I'll never have sex, not in a dramatic, movie ending kind of way. It just hit me one quiet night, lying in bed, after another date fizzled into silence. No text, no goodbye, just gone. And I remember thinking, maybe this is just how it's going to be for me. Society has this unspoken rule. Sex is a rite of passage. If you haven't done it by a certain age, something must be wrong. You're either too picky, too weird, or just unattractive. It's everywhere in songs, shows, memes, even casual conversations. People talk about their sex lives like they're talking about lunch. And when you're not part of that world, it feels like you're missing something vital, something you're supposed to have figured out already. The pressure comes from every angle. Your friends joke about it. Your parents ask vague, uncomfortable questions. Dating apps turn intimacy into a transaction. And worst of all, you start turning against yourself. You wonder if maybe your body doesn't work right. If your feelings are broken, you internalize that maybe you're behind. Less than, not enough. Because sex isn't just seen as something you do, it's tied to who people think you are. Confident, mature, desirable, normal. And so if you don't have it, what does that make you? But what if you never have sex, ever? Will your body break down? Will your mind slowly fall apart from loneliness? Are you destined to miss out on love? Or could it be possible, just maybe, that there's another kind of wholeness people don't talk about? A different kind of fulfillment they don't show in movies, in this video. I'm going to break the silence around what really happens when you never have sex, not just biologically, but mentally. Emotionally, even spiritually. I'll bring in research, expert insight, and one very personal story from my own life. A moment that almost broke me and then changed how I understand intimacy, desire, and my own worth. If you've ever looked around and felt like everyone's living a life you can't reach, if you've ever questioned your value because of what you haven't experienced, then stay with me. This video isn't about judgment, it's about truth. It's about reclaiming your story on your terms. And maybe finding a new kind of freedom along the way. When I was younger, I thought libido was something every human had in high gear by default, like hunger or sleep, just natural, automatic. But mine was inconsistent. Sometimes it was there, quietly. Sometimes it was missing entirely. And sometimes, usually after a vivid dream or a random surge of emotion, it would spike unexpectedly. I started wondering, is this normal? Am I broken? Everyone around me seemed to talk about sex like it was oxygen. I felt like I was breathing through a straw. And yet, sometimes, just thinking about a deep connection, not even physical, just emotional, would stir something I didn't expect. Then I read this libido isn't one size fits all. It's not even consistent within the same person over time. It's fluid. It responds to our circumstances, our hormones, our mental state, even our trauma. You're not born with a fixed drive like a setting on a machine. You change, and your needs change too. Our bodies are chemical machines. Dopamine gives us motivation and reward. Oxytocin bonds us, and endorphins calm and lift our moods. Sex stimulates all of them. So yes, people who are sexually active might have those happy chemicals flowing more often. But here's what most people never say out loud. Those chemicals aren't exclusive to sex. Dopamine can surge from finishing a project you care about, from dancing like an idiot in your kitchen. Oxytocin flows when you hug someone you trust, or even after a deep conversation. Endorphins rise when you cry hard, laugh harder, or run until your chest burns. You don't need a partner to feel lit up inside. Your biology knows how to find joy elsewhere. This is where things get interesting. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, rewire, reprogram itself based on your life experience. If you're not sexually active, your brain doesn't go into panic mode. It adjusts. It reallocates those rewards and connections to other behaviors. You may notice that you become more sensitive to emotional intimacy. You may daydream more, or you might feel peaceful instead of restless. It varies. Over time, many people who remain abstinent, whether by choice, circumstance, or uncertainty, experience a softening of sexual urgency, not suppression, not denial, just an internal shift. Your libido doesn't vanish. It evolves. It can turn inward into creativity, imagination, curiosity, or connection that isn't about bodies at all. I used to think something was wrong with me because I didn't crave what everyone else seemed obsessed with. I would watch scenes in movies and feel nothing. Hear my friends talk about hookups and feel alien. For a while, I tried to force it reading articles, fantasizing, even trying to date just to catch up. But it never felt like me. And eventually, I stopped pretending. I stopped apologizing for not wanting what the world said I should want. There's also the hormonal side of this. In men, regular ejaculation is linked to lowering risk of prostate issues, but it's not black and white. It's one factor among many. Diet, stress, genetics, exercise all play bigger roles than most people realize. In women, sex may support pelvic floor health and hormone cycling, but again, nothing breaks without it. These systems are adaptive. They're not fragile glass, they're elastic. We live in a culture that equates sexual activity with vitality, health, success. But that's a marketing fantasy, not biological fact. There are so many ways to feel alive in your body, connected to your emotions, or stimulated by experience. Whether you're dancing, painting, building, hiking, playing music, meditating, your brain responds and your chemistry reacts. You're not missing out on being human just because you're not having sex. What I've learned and what I still remind myself is that the body doesn't collapse without sex. The mind doesn't shrivel. What actually happens is much quieter, and in some ways, more profound. You find other doors, other rhythms, other ways to feel intimacy with the world. And when you stop seeing sex as a requirement for value, something shifts. It's not that you don't want connection anymore, it's that you redefine what connection means. What's your experience been? Has your libido ever confused you, disappeared, flared up, made you question yourself? I really want to know. Drop a comment below and be honest. You never know who else might be feeling the same way, and your words might be the one thing that helps them feel less alone. One of the biggest things I've learned is that emotional needs and sexual needs are not the same, but most people, especially in our culture, confuse the two. They think if you're not having sex, you must be lonely or bitter or repressed. But the truth is more complicated. Sometimes people have sex and still feel deeply alone, and sometimes people go without it and feel whole. The confusion happens because sex is often marketed as a shortcut to love. It's sold to us like a fast pass to belonging, validation, or self-worth. But underneath that, what many of us are really craving isn't sex, it's connection, safety, being seen, being wanted. Sex can be one way to express that, but it's not the only way. And for some people, it's not even the most meaningful way. Still, I won't lie, there were nights I cried, not because I missed sex, but because I missed belonging. I missed being chosen. I missed feeling like someone looked at me and thought, "You, I want you." It wasn't about lust. It was about worth. It was about the fear that maybe I'd be overlooked forever, that I was the extra puzzle piece that didn't fit in anyone's picture. The dating world didn't help. Swipe culture is brutal when you don't play the game by its rules. I'd see profiles where people would write, "not into virgins," or "must be experienced," and I'd freeze. It felt like someone stamped disqualified on my forehead before they even knew me. And suddenly, it wasn't just about not having sex. It was about not having a place. That's when I first learned about skin hunger, the psychological need for touch. It's real. Our bodies are wired to crave physical closeness. even if it's not sexual. Babies die without it. Adults suffer in silence without it. I realized I didn't need sex. I needed a hand on my shoulder, a hug that lingered. A moment of being held without expectation. And when you don't have that, the absence starts to echo. You feel it at night, in your chest, in your bones. The lack of physical connection starts to bleed into your emotional landscape. It can make you question your attractiveness, your humanity, and if you're not careful, it can make you think you're not lovable. But that's a lie. I had to learn that the hard way. What saved me was redefining intimacy. I started noticing where I did feel emotionally safe, deep talks with close friends, laughing until we couldn't breathe, reading late into the night and crying with fictional characters. I built intimacy in unconventional ways. Eye contact, long walks, music, silence. The more I leaned into these moments, the more I realized I wasn't missing out. I was just living differently. And you know what? Some of the most profound love I've ever felt came without a single kiss. It came through loyalty, vulnerability, showing up. It came from people who didn't want my body, but valued my soul. That's the kind of intimacy we don't celebrate enough, but it's just as real, and sometimes even more lasting. In therapy, I opened up about feeling behind because I'd never had sex. My therapist asked. Behind what? That question shook me, because I didn't have a real answer, just pressure. A voice in my head saying, "You're late. Everyone else is ahead of you." But what if there's no race, no timeline, no universal milestone for intimacy? What if we've just absorbed other people's expectations as our own? Shame. I should have lost it by now. That sentence haunted me for years. It haunted some of my friends, too. One of them lost their virginity just to feel normal and ended up in a toxic, manipulative relationship. Another has never had sex and still wonders if they're incomplete. We're all walking around with these invisible clocks ticking in our heads. But the truth is, clocks don't define us. Experience doesn't equal value. If you've ever felt like you're racing against some invisible deadline, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, who made this timeline? Who benefits from me feeling this shame? Because I promise you, the people who truly matter in your life don't care about a number. They care about your heart, and you deserve to care about it too. If you've ever questioned your worth based on sexual history or lack of it, hit that like button so we break this silence together. Leave a comment if you've ever felt that ache of disconnection. Even when no one saw it, you're not alone. You're not broken. And this community, our community, is proof that there's more than one path to feeling whole. I still remember the night I broke down in the shower. It wasn't about sex, it was about shame. That aching, unspoken kind of shame that clings to your skin even when no one's looking. The kind you don't even know how to put into words, because it's not just one moment, it's years, layers, silence. It was 2:03 a.m., mid-January. My little apartment buzzed with weak heat from a broken radiator that never quite did its job. The streets outside were dead quiet, snowflakes hitting the window like whispers. I was wrapped in an old hoodie, scrolling through Instagram, trying to feel tired. Then I saw it. A photo of a college classmate, one I hadn't spoken to in years. She was with her partner, beaming, 10 years together. 3 kids. Still can't keep our hands off each other. Thousands of likes, hundreds of heart emojis. And right then, I felt something hollow open inside me. I wasn't envious. I was invisible. Like I didn't belong in that world, the world where people built lives together. That's when the thought hit me like ice water. I've never had sex. And maybe I never will. And for the first time, that wasn't just a statistic. It felt like a sentence, like the world had moved on without me. I wasn't angry. I was discarded. I wasn't broken, but I felt forgotten. Everyone I knew talked about sex like it was this casual, expected thing. My friends joked about it, compared stories. Even coworkers would throw out comments like, "You just need to get laid." They said it like a cure, like it would fix me. But how do you fix something that was never broken? Just left out. I tried to date. God, I tried. Apps, mutual setups, random flirting at parties, but it always ended the same way. I'd get ghosted. Or if I told the truth too early, they'd look at me like I was confessing to a crime. One guy, he was sweet at first, asked me casually over dinner, "So, how many people have you been with?" I told him. His smile faded. He said, "Wait, never. That's kind of intense. Like, are you okay?" I nodded and laughed it off, but I never heard from him again. And it wasn't just rejection, it was confirmation. The fear I'd carried quietly for years finally had proof that maybe I was too different to love, too strange to be touched, too complicated to be chosen. I started asking myself questions I didn't want to answer. What's wrong with me? Am I a late bloomer? Am I scared? Do I even want it? And the worst one, am I going to die? Having never been wanted that way, I hit a wall. And that's when, reluctantly, I joined a women's support group focused on intimacy and self-worth. I didn't speak at first. I mostly listened. But one night, an older woman, maybe in her 60s, shared something that cracked me wide open. She said, "Sex isn't the doorway to intimacy. It's one doorway. You've walked through others with deeper love than most people ever know." I don't know what it was, her voice, her presence, the silence that followed, but I burst into tears, the kind of tears that had waited years to be seen because I had walked through other doors. I'd stayed up all night with friends who were grieving. I'd held hands in hospitals. I'd written letters to people in pain. I had been trusted, needed, loved. Just not in the way that counts on paper. That night, something in me changed. I stopped thinking of myself as lacking. I stopped believing I was waiting for life to start, because life had already been happening quietly, beautifully, in ways I'd been too ashamed to notice. From that night on, I stopped trying to catch up. I deleted the apps that made me feel like a profile, not a person. I started going on solo walks, deep journaling dives, random friend dates. I explored my own body, not in desperation, but with curiosity, like it was mine to discover, not prove to someone else. And I focused on connection, real connection. I built deeper friendships, gave myself permission to feel everything, to ask hard questions. I didn't need sex to feel alive. I needed truth. I needed peace. And slowly, I started finding it. I'm not saying I'll never have sex. I'm saying I'm no longer measuring my life by its absence. I've stopped asking when and started asking why, and that shift has been everything, because now my self-worth doesn't wobble based on someone else's interest. It stands. If you're watching this and feeling behind, broken, weird, or invisible, I need you to know you are none of those things. You're real, you're human. And your value was never dependent on someone else's body. It never needed permission to exist. Have you ever had a moment that changed how you see yourself forever? A sentence someone said. A moment you broke, a realization that shifted everything. Share it below. I read every comment. And if this story touched something in you, hit like, subscribe, and help others find it. This space is for us, for the ones who walk slower, quieter, deeper. You belong here. We've been taught to believe that sex is the heart of every real relationship, that without it, something's missing. But the truth is, not all relationships revolve around sex. In fact, many of the most emotionally powerful ones don't involve it at all. We just don't see those stories told often enough. There are entire communities, beautiful, valid communities, who live outside that narrative. Asexual people, for example, may not feel sexual attraction at all. Demisexual people might only feel it when deep emotional connection is present. And then there are people who choose celibacy not because of fear or repression, but because it aligns with their values, healing, say, or focus. These aren't broken people. These aren't exceptions. They're just different, and difference doesn't mean deficiency. The more I learned about these experiences, the more I realized maybe I wasn't outside of the spectrum. Maybe I was just on a part of it that doesn't get enough light. I've met couples happy, healthy, deeply bonded who rarely have sex. Some have medical reasons. Some have trauma histories. Some simply evolved together in ways that prioritized emotional closeness over physical. They still cuddle. They laugh. They cry together. Their love is not less because it doesn't look like a Hollywood script. Unfortunately, modern dating culture makes it really hard to see this as normal. We're in a time where hookup culture is not just common, it's almost expected. People brag about body counts like resumes. Apps feel more like menus than meeting grounds. There's pressure to perform, to impress, to keep up. It's not about connection. It's about conquest. And if you're someone who's not into that, you can feel erased, like your pace, your values, your depth make you unfit for modern love. But here's the thing they don't. They just make you someone who refuses to play a game with rules that don't serve your heart. One of the most healing things I ever realized is that friendship can be just as intimate as romance. And sometimes, let me be honest more, there's something sacred about being truly known by a friend. The way they remember the little things, the way they show up without conditions, the way they see you. We don't celebrate that enough. We should. Media teaches us that sex equals success, that it's the proof of desirability, power, even happiness. Think about it. How often do we see characters in movies defined by their love lives, not their inner lives? How often is virginity framed as a punchline or a problem to be solved? We've been fed a very narrow image of fulfillment, and it leaves so many of us wondering what's wrong with us if we don't fit it. But here's what they don't tell you. A significant number of adults go years or lifetimes without sex. According to data from the General Social Survey, about 1 in 3 Americans between 18 and 35 haven't had sex in the past year, some by choice, some by circumstance. That's millions of people, yet no one talks about them like they exist. Psychologist Dr. Lori Brotto, who studies sexual health, has said that sexual desire and satisfaction are not universal indicators of well-being. What matters more, she says, is how we relate to ourselves and the emotional meaning we attach to sex or the absence of it. That means it's not about numbers, it's about personal truth. So if you've ever felt like you're behind, invisible, or strange because your relationship with sex doesn't match the cultural script, here's your permission to let that go. You are not an error in the system. You're just proof that there's more than one kind of story worth telling. If you've ever been judged for not doing what others do, smash that like button. Let's change the narrative. Let's speak up for all the quiet stories, the slow love, the patient hearts, the friendships that saved us. Drop a comment with what connection means to you. And if no one's told you this lately, you're enough. Right here, just like this. There's something no one tells you about going your own way, especially when it comes to sex. They don't talk about the peace, the clarity, the strength it takes to walk a path that isn't lined with applause, but with intention. They don't talk about the dignity and patience, the confidence that slowly grows, not from being wanted, but from being centered. Let's start with the obvious. When you're not having sex just to meet an expectation, you avoid some very real risks. No STIs. No panic over late periods. No waking up next to someone who doesn't remember what you told them the night before. No walking away from a hookup feeling emptier than before. You also avoid the kind of pain that lingers quietly, the kind that comes from giving parts of yourself away hoping for connection, and only receiving silence. I've seen friends fall into patterns where sex became a placeholder for love and validation became a drug that never satisfied. When you step back from that chase, you don't lose. You protect your peace. More importantly, you gain time to understand your wants, your values, your rhythm. When you're not rushing to meet a cultural deadline, you get to live more honestly. I had space to explore my creativity, to ask myself deep questions, to reconnect with my body without anyone else's hands needing to be part of that journey. I took myself on long walks. I journaled obsessively. I tried new things not to be impressive, but to see how they made me feel, without the noise of sexual expectation. I heard myself more clearly. I learned to distinguish loneliness from longing, to understand the difference between craving intimacy and craving approval. That quiet time taught me patience, real patience, the kind where you don't chase connection out of fear, but wait for it from a place of readiness. I learned how to stay when I wanted to flee. I learned how to listen when my own mind turned against me. I learned that just because a part of me felt empty didn't mean I needed someone else to fill it. Sometimes, it just needed my attention. I've said this before, but I'll say it again because it's everything. Sex doesn't always lead to connection, but self-connection always does. The more I tuned in, the less I felt like I was missing something. I began to see myself not as someone who hadn't been chosen, but as someone who had chosen herself. I stopped needing a partner to feel complete. I stopped measuring my value against what I hadn't experienced. And slowly, the shame began to lift. Not because I suddenly had all the answers, but because I stopped believing I needed to be fixed. People think if you're not having sex, your life must be empty. But what if it's not empty? Just redirected, I filled my time with books, writing, cooking for myself, deepening friendships, learning the language of my own body. And in that slowness, I found more clarity than any rushed relationship ever gave me. There is richness in not chasing what the world chases. There is beauty in building a life on your terms, not avoiding sex out of fear, but because you've realized that connection is not a one-lane road. I gained peace, not immediately, but over time, the kind you don't trade for quick validation. The kind that settles deep in your chest and makes you exhale softer. I no longer needed to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. That kind of peace doesn't scream. It doesn't beg for attention, but it holds you through the nights. It reminds you that you're enough right now, and it makes it easier to see that even without sex, your life can still be intimate, still be deep, still be yours, completely. Not everyone's story includes sex, and that doesn't make the story any less human, less full, or less worth telling. We live in a world obsessed with proof of passion, desirability, success, but real fulfillment. It's quieter, deeper, and sometimes invisible to others. Your worth isn't waiting on a partner. It isn't hiding in a bedroom. It isn't tied to anyone's desire or lack of it. It exists now. It has always existed, even if you've never been kissed. Even if you've never been touched, you're not behind. You're not broken. You're not a problem to be solved. Sex can be beautiful, connective, powerful, but it's one part of the human experience, not the definition of it. Some people live whole, rich, deeply emotional lives without it. Others experience it and still feel empty. The presence or absence of sex doesn't determine your capacity for love, for meaning, or for joy. I've stopped asking myself what I've missed. Now I ask, am I living with intention? Am I building relationships that feed me? Am I kind to my body? Do I feel peace when I'm alone? These are the real questions. This is the real measure. And if you're sitting there with that ache in your chest, the one that whispers, you're the only one who feels this way, I want you to hear me clearly. You're not the only one, not even close. You are part of something, a quiet rebellion. A different way of being that's just as valid, just as worthy, just as whole. If this video spoke to a part of you no one else seems to see, don't leave quietly. Like this video, leave a comment, Share your truth. Subscribe if you want more conversations that go deeper. Let's build a space where no one has to perform to feel like they belong. Here at Psych to Deep, we see you. And we're not afraid to speak the quiet truths.